Jake here with Action for Liberty, where this is our show. We expose corrupt politicians and align corporate media, and we're not going to take a break just as the elections didn't go the way we thought they were going to go last night. Joining me today is MAGA Jesse. Do you still want to go by that moniker these days?
Absolutely.
Jeez.
I'm not afraid of it at all. Last night was tough to watch a little bit in certain regards, and as conspiratorial and skeptical as I am, there's questions to be asked, and especially in Arizona and things that are going on, we have to be ultra aware, so not afraid to stand by Trump still.
Well, okay, we'll get into some of those conspiracies, and maybe I'll be very open-minded to them today. My God, I can't believe what happened. One guy who's not afraid to show up even after losing is Representative Eric Mortensen.
Howdy.
Should I even ask how you're doing today?
I'm doing all right. I mean, this doesn't really change much for me. I'm going to stay involved and keep doing what I'm doing, but it just won't be as a legislator. So be it.
I feared that we'd ever have to have the show like with you, but people have no idea like how much you hated that job.
It's a disgusting building. It's beautiful. I mean, it's beautiful, but it's a gross place, gross people, and it's a shame that even these newly minted Republican legislators that got elected, I guarantee you 99%, if not more, will be sold out by this weekend, because I know what's going to happen between now and Saturday.
Yeah.
And so I'm happy to talk about that if we get to it.
Well, I think we got to get to the results, because honestly, at this point, most people don't even realize the results. Everyone basically predicted a red wave, right?
Yep.
I certainly, I'm not just a big Republican cheerleader. In 2018, I predicted that there was going to be a small blue wave. I was actually low on the numbers, but I predicted it. I didn't want that to happen, but that's what happened. And then I hit on the nail on the head, like in 2020, that Republicans would take 4 to 6 seats in the House, and they took 5, and that they would would have a one-person majority in the Senate, which they did. Technically, there's 2 people that broke off and became independent, but those guys are still Democrats, let's be honest. So they had a one-person majority. And so the writing on the wall seemed like a red wave. Everyone's talking about a red wave, right?
Mm-hmm.
And whether you're a layman just watching the news or experts like people we have on this show, it showed a red wave. At this point, it was not only not a red wave, it was not a red ripple, it was a blue ripple. It wasn't necessarily a blue wave, but Democrats picked up in Minnesota and around the country. Dawson, throw up the Fox News article. I saw it straight right before going live, and they're reporting on Minnesota. And it says, Minnesota election results, Democrats ride blue wave to trifecta, win, take control of state government. So for first time in 8 years, full Democrat control. Now, what does that mean? We have a statement from Hortman. Did you pull that up? It's the Capitol View. You didn't. I'll wait on that comment. But I want to read what that's going to mean to us, because the email one. Melissa Hortman's already telling us what that means. We got a good quote there, and it's not good for us. Scroll down a little bit there, Dawson. Where's the one on her? Keep going down. So Melissa Hortman is the far left Democrat Speaker of the House right there. And so she's talking about this, historic win. Where are you going there, buddy? Right? No, go right there. You're on that paragraph. I didn't tell you to stop? All right, there you go. So she's basically talking about this win, and says, rather than being relegated to the minority, Hortman said her caucus will work with an emboldened Walz. If you can imagine the nightmare scenario, is Tim Walz emboldened. Go back to that real quick. And to try to boost education funding, tighten gun laws, pass measures related to climate, seek to legalize adult use marijuana, and implement a guaranteed paid family medical leave program. Quote, there's a lot of things that need investment in the state right now, she said, and a paid family medical leave program could be prepaid. Instead of waiting a couple years until there's enough money for a program to start, we could start right now if we use some of the surplus. So there you go. That's what the Democrats want to do. They want to take your guns, and they already want to spend the surplus that they overtaxed you on.
Yep, California 2.0. That's what they want to do, which is what a lot of us have been calling or saying for like years, that that's what they want to do. And it's obvious if you're paying attention, but she just came out and said it. The Green New Deal, take your guns away, spend your surplus money, excess money that the state doesn't need. They've already passed a budget. So that's the goal. Make us California, except, the beautiful weather.
Yeah. And meanwhile, there's potential we run out of diesel this winter, right?
I saw in
what the hell?
Allentown. I used to live in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and they ran out of diesel fuel. At least one of their plazas, these little things that we would call like an exit around here, but on these paid interstates, these tollways, they call it plazas, and no diesel at this particular Allentown plaza. And they've been talking about it for like 3 weeks, and apparently it's happening.
So, Mort, the Democrats had a 6-seat majority in the House.
Yep.
We get redistricted, and so it's not like a past election where it's the same seats. It's hard to even track this thing. So there's a lot of Republican wins last night, and so it might be confusing. You're like, oh, where do things stand? But when all the numbers get put together, and Jesse, you were looking this up, I think it ends up still being a 6-person majority. There's literally nothing that changed in the Minnesota House. Is that right?
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it's looking like, and it's so unfortunate because, like you were pointing out earlier, every political pundit, everyone that was paying attention, and especially the people that are in here in the fight in Minnesota, things didn't line up. Things didn't add up the way that we were expecting things to go, and across the country, and everyone that was paying attention to it, people that were forecasting all of these elections, and it shows that, maybe this propaganda that the Democrats are putting out is actually scaring these voters into doing what they want. But now we see exactly what Melissa Hortman wants to do, take our guns. Like you said, the Green New Deal, Mort, they want to force everybody onto these electric vehicles. Good luck starting that up in the winter, and they want us all dependent on the grid. It's a disaster. I can't believe how bad things are looking with Hortman and emboldening Walz, like you said. We can't let that go on.
And now they really want to kill babies.
We have to continue to fight it, right? Absolutely.
Well, and it's totally a uniparty in the Capitol. And I talk about the Green New Deal. Like, even Republicans in the House voted for, our version of the Green New Deal, including, you guys got Wiesenberg shirts on.
Yeah.
What's his name? Kresha. Ron Kresha voted for it in the House. Yeah. And it's if you think there's two parties duking it out on opposite ends of the field in the Capitol, you are dead wrong. These people are at best fighting between the 40-yard lines.
Well, that's a great point, and we're going to pull up something because, I think what ended up happening, I don't know where you're going to go with election integrity, and I'm definitely open to hearing what you want to say about that. But my head usually goes to, I think the problem exists outside of just fraud. Certainly because this would have to be massive fraud. These results were coming in multiple states. Both the tyrant governors in Wisconsin, Michigan, so Whitmer, and then Evers in Wisconsin, they all won. So did Walz, just performed the same way in the similar states with these COVID tyrants. And the Michigan legislature flipped, right? Arizona's right now undecided in terms of legislature. Fetterman won in Pennsylvania, which in some ways is kind of interesting. There'll be a lot of material for the next 6 years.
It's unbelievable, the Fetterman thing. It's crazy, and some of that is to blame because a lot of the people voted before. A lot of the people voted before that debate. A lot of people didn't understand how bad he was, but even that doesn't fully provide an explanation. It is so confusing. How would that guy ever be able to win all of these votes? It doesn't make any sense. He is incompetent. He is unable to do the job, and we have to sit here and believe that he won the election. Yeah,
well, so I'm going to get into some of my theories, and we're going to also bring in one guy that had a good night, Nathan Wiesenberg, in just a minute. But the Senate in Minnesota flipped. There was a one-person majority, essentially one-person majority. Republicans had 34 seats. The Democrats had 32 with 2 independents, basically. So let's just call – or I did that math wrong. 31 with 2 independents. But it's essentially 34 Republicans to 33 Democrats. That is now flipped. Democrats have 34, at least at this point, this is what we believe, 34 Democrats in the Senate and 33 Republicans. So they have a one-person majority. They have full control of the Minnesota government, with them feeling emboldened because Walz was on the referendum and he won, right? The closest race was a real strong conservative, Tom DePel in Senate District 41, my Senate district. I live there. It does not seem like it was going Democrat. and she won by less than 1 point majority. This is Judy Seeberger. This is like a far leftist, just like all the rest of these radicals, running against Tom DePel, straight-laced, good guy, good person, fits the district really well. And he had a big uphill battle the whole time with the Republican establishment, and hopefully I can get him on the show to talk about that. But a really fascinating thing, he wins the endorsement in April. He wins by 70%. He was running against Representative Tony Jurgens, who's just like, if you want to talk about a rhino, like you got your Rhino of the Year guy right there. But, I mean, Jurgens, he's a Democrat. And we allege this all the time. Yeah, go ahead, show that. Show that. You gotta move it up there. It's a little off screen. There you go. Now, who is that? Who's that guy that joined us in studio today?
Are we go? Yeah. So this is a representative minority leader. He requires being called leader. It's like a Star Wars thing in my mind. Leader Dowd, and it sounds like he's still going to be minority leader because Republicans haven't learned their lesson. So I have awarded him officially. This is the Rhino of the Year award. To Representative Kurt Dowd for spending hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars against Republicans this past year.
Yeah, he took D.C. money and brought it in and spent it against conservative Republicans in many cases, people who had the endorsement like Mark Bashofsky, and now a lot of these guys didn't win. So, honestly, the establishment screwed these guys over in the primary, then didn't even come in. They didn't even come in and help out Bashofsky in a really important district, and now they're in the minority. It'd be insane that this guy would get reelected minority leader, but I have very little faith in these legislators up at the Capitol.
Yeah,
so
like literally his job, being the minority leader, is to get the majority. Like that, that's his job, to attain majority status in the House. Like Kurt Dowd should just resign in absolute disgrace. The guy is a joke.
Well, and this is the guy that Tony Jurgens, picked to be leader. So Tony Jurgens loses a endorsement in April. It's like 70% to 25%. There was one other candidate got a real small margin in that. So the delegates overwhelmingly picked Tom DePel. Then there's a primary because Tony Jurgens doesn't want to abide by the Republican delegates. It's his right to do it. All right, he's going to run and get primary. And the Senate Victory Fund, the Senate establishment, is siding with Jurgens. So now Tom DePel's got to overcome the establishment. They literally told this DePel, you need to drop out of the race. Hopefully I can talk to DePel about that. It's a very fascinating story. So so he has to overcome this, and they're basically helping Jurgens. And DePel wins, was like a 20-point margin, Jesse, something like that. DePel
right, in the primary, right.
Jurgens.
It was a massive win.
So then what does Jurgens do? He puts a yard sign in his yard for Seeberger and quietly works to help out the Democrat. Now remember, this is
Seeberger being the Democrat candidate.
Seeberger being the Democrat candidate, all right? Right now she is the victor. There might be a recount in this district. It's really close. But currently it looks like the whole balance of the Senate came down to Senate District 41, where you had a really good conservative candidate, Tom DePel, great man, versus Judy Seeberger, who's going to be far leftist, and Tony Jurgens, who was the establishment Republicans' pick, endorses Judy Seeberger. Play the video.
I'm Tony Jurgens. For 6 years, I've been the Republican state representative for Hastings, Cottage Grove, and Athens. Now I'm endorsing Democrat Judy Seeberger for state senate because this isn't about blind party loyalty. It's about choosing the right person for the job, the best person to represent us in St. Paul. That's Judy Seeberger. Tom DePel is trying to buy this seat by spending $100,000 of his own money on his campaign. But this seat isn't his to buy. It's your seat, and you get to decide. Now, I won't agree with Judy on all political issues, but the job is much more than partisan politics. It's about people and communities, kids and families, veterans and seniors. Now, if we disagree on an issue, I know Judy will listen. She'll give us the opportunity to help her form her position. But in the end, Judy will make the decisions based on what she thinks is best for the residents of the district, not extreme right-wing organizations like their opponent.
Yeah, what he was referring to there, huh?
You to join me in voting Judy Seeberger for state senate.
Thanks, Tony. I appreciate your support and your leadership throughout the years, and I appreciate you.
Judy, best of luck. Vote for Judy Seeberger.
So you say uniparty, that's the uniparty right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I've not seen that or heard that yet. So to hear him talk about the future of the Senate, and we've talked about red flag gun laws, taking people's guns unconstitutionally, taking away their due process rights. We've talked about Green New Deal. Like, as everybody across the state right now, any freedom-loving individual, whether you call yourself Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, as people are looking at the results and going, everybody wants to know, who do I blame? Is it fraud? Is it this? Is it that? I would blame Tony Jurgens. I would blame Tony Jurgens for losing the Senate based on what we just witnessed. And when you lose the Senate and Democrats keep the House, and of course idiot Governor Walz is still in office, like, they've just got an open runway to go wherever the hell they want to go. And I blame Tony Jurgens.
Yeah, and it's not just Jurgens. It's the fact that this is the person he is, and yet the establishment wanted Jurgens in there. It's Kurt Dowd himself that would have,
true.
In fact, here's the interesting thing. Jurgens' whole start in politics was what we call the McNamara trick, where he all of a sudden files for the primary at the very end of the filing deadline, because in Minnesota you only have 2 weeks to file for office. And Jurgens gets in, and everyone thinks Danny McNamara had a challenger, and then Danny McNamara drops out, and so Jurgens has no primary challenge in a really red district. So Tony Jurgens never really won the people over. He just pulled a shenanigan to get in.
And I want to put it this way, because this stuff can get kind of complex, but if you break it down like this, Tony Jurgens ran in a primary against an endorsed Republican.
Right.
So that he would be the Republican candidate for state senator to run against, what's this chick's name?
Judy Seeberger.
Seeberger? Okay. To run against Judy Seeberger. Like, he wanted to be the Republican opponent to Judy Seeberger, and what does he do? He turns around and endorses the same woman that he wanted to run against.
And now that's why
total uniparty.
And that's why the Senate is Democrat right there.
Yep.
Because it all came down to 300 votes. And really, if he actually flipped votes, because that's what you assume that trick was for, is he got Republicans. Let's say there's 150 Republicans in the district that actually like Tony Jurgens. I might be overestimating it, but there's 100, maybe independents, and they would have gone Tom DePel. He flipped those votes. That's the 300-point margin right there. Mm-hmm. Or he just found a way that 300 people didn't end up voting even in the election, and then that hurt DePel's numbers.
Yep, that video will forever be his legacy. That forever is going to be the way that we have to remember him, because he supported the Democrat, and even though it's such a shitty quality camera and everything, it's just the blurriest thing in the world. It's unbelievable. Like you said, Mort, that's who he wanted to run against. That's who he was saying that he had to be the nominee to defeat, and he turns around, blasts all these lies about Tom DePel. And I thought one thing that was interesting that he was saying there, he was attacking Tom DePel for using his own money to run an election. So he's not beholden to any of these special interests. He's only doing this, putting his own money into it. That's respectable. That's not something that you should shame someone for. That's a respectable move.
All right.
I wonder if he said the same about Donald Trump when Donald Trump funded his own presidential campaign in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to just call this race though for the Democrat, because here's Karen Scullin of Fox 9. Dakota County, this is a tweet by her. Dakota County confirming they had to drive results to Hastings to be counted, awaiting more info. Stand by. This is important for the 2nd congressional district race.
Boy.
So there was interesting stuff happening in Dakota County. There's a lot of reports that their machines weren't working. Here they are actually saying that they had to drive the ballots here. So that's chain of custody.
Oh, yeah. You always got to be skeptical when you hear that the ballots are moved into a car. Who's driving the car? Who's the one taking these ballots? Do any of them go missing? And I hate hearing that. That they moved ballots because these machines aren't working. And big surprise, these machines aren't working. Something that we always know. And we can't be trusting these machines in our elections.
All right. Well, let's bring in a positive note. Last night, not surprising to anyone, we did have one massive victory here. This is why I'm sporting the hoodie, and you got the T-shirt on.
Absolutely.
Although you had the Mort for House T-shirt.
I noticed
How
that.
Dare
Suddenly
you?
that disappeared.
What a diss on Mort there. Jeez.
I got hot.
Well, joining us now is newly elected Senator Nathan Wiesenberg from God's Country up there in Little Falls, or is he coming from Deer Camp? I can't remember. Do we have Nathan? America.
Yeah, America. How's it going?
How you feeling today?
I'm feeling pretty good. I was up late last night. We were at the VFW watching polls come in and stuff. So, but I feel good. There's gonna be a lot of work to do because we didn't get a lot of help, and our GOP established or party leaders are horrible.
Like when I look at the whole state, the best result is you. Like that we come out of 2022 with what I think, and of course if you don't do this, we'll be on your ass. But the best potential leader up at the Capitol and it's a 4-year term.
Right.
And to get there was tremendous shenanigans. First of all, they cheat on caucus. These are Republican establishment figures. They cheat on caucus to get your delegates removed. Then they shut you guys down at your county convention. They almost stop you guys from even getting people elected to the state convention. Then your endorsing convention almost never happens. They finally do it on a Friday afternoon, the opposite side of the district. And they somehow miraculously have a convention 4 hours long and never count a single ballot. So they withhold a potential endorsement for you. Then they have guys running against you in the primary, and they still lose. And luckily, you're in a district where you could probably shoot someone in downtown Little Falls and still get elected as a Republican. What was the margin, like 50 points for you?
Yeah, it was 70. I think I had 72.5%. So it was a big margin. That's basically what the district is 75% Republican. So it followed those lines.
There you go. Well, so I guess this whole time you probably thought you were going to be sitting in the majority. Now you hear, I don't know if you were able to hear the whole conversation, but now knowing that you're in the minority, and this is why, because you have the Uniparty working against the most important race, which is Senate District 41. There's really two big races it came down to in Minnesota. Actually, I take that back. There's five races, right, that they spent. The Democrats poured in, like, was it $1 to $2 million in broadcast media in the last couple of weeks. And I think the most spent was in Roger Chamberlain's district. I can't remember what that is because it used to be 36. And so incumbent Republican Chamberlain actually ended up getting taken out last night. And then DePaul was number 2. So Senate District 41 was number 2. And then I think pretty much most of those races, other than Jim Abler, the Democrats prevailed in. So hearing all that stuff, how does that make you feel?
Well, it's crazy. How can we get so many Democrats voted in when they literally killed our state over the last 2 years? It's ridiculous. So I guess we have a lot of work to do, and got to put the boxing gloves on and stand our ground. And we got to teach people that, well, both parties are not representing us. They're just looking out for themselves.
So Nathan, I think I've seen a picture or two, maybe in real life also, that you own a gun or two, right? Is that a fair statement to make?
Yeah, I might own a few guns.
Okay. So when I read Melissa Hortman's statement here that, let me see if I can pull this up again. So she's referring to this massive victory and looks at this as basically referendum. She said that we'll work with an emboldened Walz. I mean, if that's not the biggest word that we feared, was an emboldened Tim Walz, to try to boost educational funding, tighten gun laws, and pass measures to climate change. Like, now you are going to actually be up at the Senate, literally with people that want to make you a felon, right?
Right. Yep. Not going to happen.
I think you're probably going to be one of the most solid guys for our Second Amendment. And honestly, it's sad that it should just be every Republican, but that's just not the case. It's not the case on taxes, not the case on government spending, but certainly isn't the case on guns.
Yeah, well, we all got to vote to keep our Second Amendment, and maybe there are some brainwashed Democrats we can pull on our side, but I don't know if that's true.
Gotcha. All right, so people are going to be interested in following you, Wiesenberg. So what's the best way for them to follow where you go when you're up at the Capitol? Is this Facebook? Is this Elon Musk's Twitter? Where do people follow you?
I think I'm just going to be live all the time. No.
We'll get a body camera on
Facebook,
Jennifer.
I suppose. That's right, exactly. So people can actually hear what's going on. I know probably Facebook, I suppose. I haven't thought about it. So, but people need to be able to see what's going on. Just keep people updated there, I would say.
Gotcha. Bridget, before I let Nate go, any comments that are directed towards him? Don't have your mic on.
Yeah, I know. I forget about that thing. I don't see any actually specifically directed towards Nathan.
What do you got there before I move on? Because I'd like to get Nathan's opinion on things.
Let's see. Well, we do have an interesting comment from, where did it go? Hold on here. From Debbie Mutter. She says, my 93-year-old dad has never voted for a Democrat, but seriously considered voting for Walz because he felt safer with the COVID handling, and he also thinks abortion should be legal in many cases. So I don't know if that happened a lot. But
so this actually was a thing that was the polling data suggests, and we were shitting on the KSTP Survey USA poll, which ended up being very accurate, right? In the end, Trafalgar was way off. And they were showing that Walz was leading with the old generations a lot. And the old generations vote at a higher margin. So if I go back to my statement, looking at the state fair and go, how is our state fair so popular, and yet you're telling me Tim Walz has got a 7-point margin, and no one was at his booth? Maybe because we were popular with the youth. And so if there's maybe some optimism out there, is that the youth were loving our message. And Ron Paul used to talk about this. He was a guy that was big on liberty. He would say that liberty is a youthful message, right? It's kind of rebellious against the established way of doing things in politics. So I guess maybe that's some hope, but didn't do much for us last night because apparently older people vote in larger margins. So I think that would be one of the big factors. Is that fair, Jesse?
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. Absolutely.
All right, more before we let Wiesenberg go, what is any parting advice to maneuver the damn Capitol?
Yeah. Boy, these headphones are driving me nuts. Sorry, Nate. I'm going to take these suckers off. So, I mean, real quick, what'll happen over the next, 72 hours is you're going to get your ass kissed. You're going to have hickeys on your ass by everybody at the Capitol. And so don't let that get to your head. Don't become addicted to this stuff, which is what happens to so many of these people. They feel high and mighty and powerful and special all of a sudden. So don't let that happen. Stay true to who you are. Stay true to your values. Don't become addicted and feel like your whole existence revolves around that Capitol building.
Right. And I won't. So Jake, did you talk to Mort about his new position?
No. What's his new position?
I don't know either.
My LA?
I will volunteer a lot of time for you down there. I'm sure they love to see me down there still.
Yeah, he's referring to his legislative assistant, if that wouldn't throw people off. If Mort was his legislative assistant. Oh, man, they must be so mad at you already. I can't believe you even said that on air. Oh, jeez.
Well, maybe if they work for us, things would be better. Yeah.
Right. All right, well, I hate to keep you from afternoon deer stands, so...
I got to go clean some deer, actually.
Yeah? Did you shoot any that were over a half year old?
Oh, yeah.
Hey, listen, they're tender. I'm not blaming you.
Right.
And you got to control the population.
Well, inflation, I can't afford to buy meat, so I just got to harvest it.
It's funny you say that. I was at deer camp. We were breaking down the cost. Now, granted, you live a lot closer where you hunt. We're like, there's no way that hunting is economical ever. It certainly isn't when you go out west hunting elk like I do, but even deer hunting, it's not economical at all. It's just easier to buy pork or even beef.
Yeah, it's a sport that gives back a lot of fun and so you get meat out of it.
That's right. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, Nate, and congratulations on the victory.
America.
Yeah, America. All right. Jeez, right now, God save our country. I was thinking, this is such an important election. The only hope we have in saving this country is a red wave. And I don't even know if that would have done it because, let's just be honest, the Republican establishment is a uniparty with the Democrats. Mm-hmm. They print money. They grow government just the same way. But now that you've got Democrats, because right now, correct me if I'm wrong, the count for the U.S. Senate is it's like likely it's going to be a 50-50 Senate, right?
Or 51 for the Democrats, even based on if we want to believe what's going on right now. So, it's looking like it could just come down to Georgia, and with that runoff election, and the U.S. Senate isn't looking great, and that means that Chuck Schumer gets to stay in power. Chuck Schumer gets to continue to lead the way for the Senate, and the whole thing federally, obviously it's a uniparty out there too. There's very few of the senators that are ever willing to stand up for the people, but on a higher note, on a good note, we do see that there's going to be people, Rand Paul, J.D. Vance, and a couple of people, it looks like Nevada's looking good. So we might see a couple of senators that aren't afraid to call it out, and we need more people with balls in there.
The U.S. House, do we have a projection right now? It looks like the Republicans are going to take the House.
Right, it looks like that too, and we'll see how much of a majority it is. It could end up being real slim, but, I'm at the point, let's go, Brandon. Let's just impeach that dude. I'm so sick of what's going on because, they impeached Trump for no reason. So, here we have the inflation. We have an incompetent president. We have someone who is failing to do the job. He's not even mentally there. Let's toss the old dude out. It's time.
I'm looking right now at USA Today. It's saying 48-48 in the Senate, and the House right now, Democrats have 176 and Republicans have 204. You need 218 in the House.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at this point, we just don't know. I know that the Senate's certainly waiting on Nevada. It's waiting on Arizona.
Alaska's
going to go Republican. It's just a matter of which Republican.
Things are looking good. Maybe Lisa Murkowski, she's not in the lead right now, so Kelly Shibaka may end up finally retiring Lisa Murkowski, which would be a
so we get
big
rid of that
victory.
So in other words, we get rid of that Democrat, right?
Yeah, exactly. She's the same thing.
And then Georgia is neck and neck, and then the Warlock doesn't get the 50%, then it's a runoff.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a severely flawed candidate down there, so it doesn't look like
it's going to be tough. But you know what? If people want to rally, Herschel can be the guy, because, a lot of the times when people are attacking him, they don't see the changed man that he is now. He's taken a lot. I believe he's at least changed from what I've seen from his earlier career to now. And, there is a little bit of a revival story, and people may look at what's going on and say, let's double down. Let's get Herschel in there after all. Even though he has some flaws, people are looking at these results, and they're going to have to say, we can't let these Democrats continue what they're doing. So if Herschel can be that blockade, I say we run it.
All right, so let's talk about money for a second. The Democrats in Minnesota, and we'll just clue us in Minnesota. You guys can watch whatever U.S. media to get the results nationwide. I know a lot of people are going to get that, but what you're not going to get is a breakdown of Minnesota like we're going to give you. The spending advantage the Democrats had was just tremendous. Just if you take the Democrat State Central Committee versus the Republican Party of Minnesota, it's a 20-1, the best case that we can tell, right? Or worst case. No, wait, best case. Best case scenario is a 20-1 advantage for the Democrats.
That can't be true, Jay. Come on. The Republicans, they say it all the time. Republicans are the party of millionaires and billionaires. So I find that hard to believe.
Isn't that
and I'm
fascinating?
being a little facetious, obviously, because
Yeah.
I remember 2 years ago it was 11-1, and that's what I've been telling people, that no, they outraised Republicans 11-1 in Minnesota. But now apparently I was wrong. It's 20-1.
I think it's closer to 30-1 because you put in all these other resources. It was tremendous, and we won't know these numbers until is it the end of year? I think not until February 1st. I think probably February 1st. But we do have a general idea from the pre-general report, and it was a pretty massive amount just from what we could tell. But just to the two parties that the Republican Party of Minnesota only raised and spent about $1 million to the $20 million that the Democrats. It's like, how is that even a fair contest at this point? Pull up the election results on Secretary of State. In obviously, I'm not breaking any news to people, but just see where it says all without judicial. It's up at the top of statewide races. All right, so this is what you got under David Hand's leadership, the Republican Party chair, who's just turns out this guy's a real lowlife from what we can tell. And he's gone after Action for Liberty, so that's why I have no problem bringing him up.
Yep, he's the runner-up to Kurt Dowd for Rhino of the Year.
Yeah, I know. I think he probably takes the cake, honestly, Mort. This guy's a piece of work. Jensen gets 44.5% to Tim Walz with 52.2%. Third parties of relatively no matter in this race. And that was actually showed up in the KSTP poll. Kim Crockett for Secretary of State, right in line. Once you pull it up a little bit here, because you got my subscreen in the way, 45 to 54%. Now, you had an interesting point before we went on air, Jesse, about that, about the dynamics of the Secretary of State administering an election.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I was just thinking about that, and we see the same thing in Arizona. Why is it that we allow Secretary of States, the people who are supposed to be adjudicating the election, the people that are supposed to be overseeing the entire process, why is it that they can run in that very same election? Why can Steve Simon run for Secretary of State while he's the Secretary of State adjudicating the election? It doesn't make any sense. It leads to corruption. It leads to fraud. It leads to things being able to be covered up. And obviously, he wants himself to be reelected, and he wants the whole Democratic ticket in there. So
here's why it's such a good point, because there's literally a law in the books. We talked about this on the show with Ben DiNucci, who ended up losing. So Ben DiNucci up in Senate District 7, so Rob Farnsworth ends up winning, which is great. But you can't have relatives. If you're running for office, you can't have relatives, election judges in precincts. So there's a law in the books that says you can't have like a distant relative in an election judge position, but somehow if you're actually on the ballot, well, the law also says if you're running for office, you can't be an election judge. Yeah, duh. But somehow you can run for Secretary of State and be the election judge of the whole state.
Yep, exactly. And the same thing with the county. You know, if these county clerks, they're doing the exact same thing. They're able to continue to run for re-election, even though they're the ones on the ballot for their own, for the exact election that they are supposed to be in charge of. It's corrupted. I think it's a law that we need to change right now.
All right, so we made our predictions last week. Pretty much no one thought Kim Crockett was going to pull it off against Steve Simon, even though, I don't do this every year. I've never voted for a Democrat my whole life, but I don't always fill in every Republican. And I'm in that polling location yesterday. I'm like, yeah, I'm voting straight ticket. I voted every single Republican on there. But not that I actually had hope that Kim was going to win, but I wanted her to win, right? And so no one was really predicting that. And then I don't know how many people caught this, but I didn't offer a prediction. I don't even think you guys did offer a prediction on the governor's race. And the reason being on that is I didn't think it looked good, but I'm too emotionally attached on it. Obviously, I wanted nothing more than Tim Walz to lose. Say what you will about Scott Jensen, okay? And there's definitely fair criticisms of the way he campaigned, although I thought his campaign was relatively good. In hindsight. Just the Republican brand sucked, apparently. But I was just too emotionally attached. And, obviously if there was no emotional attachment, that would have been my prediction. What I did think was going to happen was Jim Schultz was going to be Attorney General. A lot of people thought that. And I certainly thought that Ryan Wilson was going to win. So go pull up that. In the Attorney General's race, which when you look down ballot, Keith Ellison won your district. So
he sure did.
Go back up. Yep, there you go. So you look at races like that, and Mark Bashosky, who it's real tragedy we don't have that guy, and Keith Ellison was winning those districts. If you look at Ryan Wilson right there is the closest margin. So he's just outside the quarter point margin that has an automatically public financed recount. But boy, you would want to see that one tabulated again. So the closest a Republican won to winning statewide in 16 years is Ryan Wilson with, what is that, a 34 basis point difference. And then on the bottom, with basically no third party, so you just have 2,372 write-ins, Keith Ellison holds on to the Attorney General's position. So you want to talk about dangerous for our state. And he wins by less than a point. Now, the Republicans can do a recount. They're going to have to fund it. It's going to be very costly. It's not going to be publicly financed. You have to have a quarter point difference. In the state house or state legislative race, it's got to be 50 basis points, so 0.5%. And even DePel's race is not inside that margin. So I don't know. But I certainly think there needs to be some recounts. Certainly when you talk about Dakota County having these issues.
Oh, yeah.
And there's also issues in where was it? Chisago. Chisago had an issue too. So you would certainly want to see it. And hopefully we can get some expertise on this. I'm definitely open to the idea that there's some kind of cheating, but it's just, to me, the practicality, and I know you and I have talked about this more, it is we have to see the evidence. Someone's got to have this thing mapped out.
Yeah, I'm all open. I'm all ears for people who have actual proof of election fraud. I've had people send me screenshots of, here's the Wi-Fi, signals in my polling location, and I mean it can be interesting. Like somebody sent me something saying, "Look, there's a Bill Gates named Wi-Fi inside my polling place," and I tend to think that's more people, being trolls than anything else, and making a joke out of it.
But you almost kind of wonder, is this really Bill Gates doing this just so that people go, oh, whatever, you know?
Oh, wouldn't that be that? That's the 4D
troll
chess
ever.
right there.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that is 4D chess, right, Jesse?
That is indeed 4D chess. But I know I'm the kind of person, I do not feel confident when I'm putting my ballot inside a machine. It feels unnatural. It doesn't feel like the way that things should go. And I know that not necessarily for Minnesota, but in Arizona, they were having these machines with 25% of them being incorrectly read, and them saying, it's okay, your vote's going to be counted. We'll make sure that it gets counted correctly after the fact. But if you're going there and you find out that there's problems with the machines right in front of you, it's
it's basically a Scantron, and so of course you've been making this argument against your teachers your whole life. No, I'm kidding. It's a Scantron, basically. It's reading the thing. So you think it's a very small conspiracy, people manipulating that code, or because that's where it really gets me. Is like it would be so widespread that it seems illogical.
Right. I don't know exactly how it works either. I'm not that tech savvy. I just know that people don't feel confident when they're using them. We're seeing problems with them. What I want to see actually happen is there's all of these people who want to be election judges, all of these people who want to be poll workers who the counties never get back to. It's people who want to make sure that the elections are run fairly. Why don't we double the amount of people that are election judges? That way we don't have all of these problems. That way we can make sure that everything is hand counted the way that people want. And there's enough people to make sure that it can happen, especially in these rural
hand
areas.
could also have errors. That's the issue.
Yeah, absolutely. But the more people, the better, because you have more oversight. And especially when there are hardcore Republicans, hardcore Democrats, both looking at the same ballot, that I trust the hardcore Republican and Democrat looking at more than a machine.
Yeah, hold on. I gotta sneeze. Oh, it went away. I was like, shoot, he stopped talking, and I gotta sneeze. Right now. That's the worst feeling. Well, let's just put aside that there was some kind of rigged election. I think you have to at this point until evidence is suggesting. And I just want to. For fans that believe in that, I'm very open-minded. All right, Jesse tends to lean way towards that route, but I'm very open-minded on it. And for you YouTube censors, not that I really give a crap about you guys, because we've found a very good platform in Rumble, and they're not silencing us. But for you YouTube censors, we're just having a conversation here. I'm not making a statement of fact. Or what
it's
I
just
believe
my
to be
opinion
fact.
too. It's just the things that I'm seeing, just the things that I'm gathering. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I mean, this is what I'm seeing.
Yeah, we'll be off YouTube. Don't worry about it. By the way, YouTube won't even let us run ads. And they won't even just say that you can't run the ads. They put us through this whole thing like, well, we'll get to this and we're gonna fix this, and eventually it's like we'll fix it. I'm like, good God, these guys are clearly not wanting to do this. But of course, they look at our account and they go, oh, look at all these flags that we've put on them because they dared talk about Joe Biden's speech. Right? Remember that was the first flag we got from YouTube.
Yep.
Well, a couple of things that I got to put out there, and one of the things I think you allude to this, Mort, the propaganda from the mainstream media, and certainly they're in bed with the social media companies. So that's a big hurdle to overcome, and I think that does play into it. Were we the only team right, team red, so to speak, group out there that couldn't run ads on Google? Certainly I've seen ads by Republicans that penetrated those platforms, but have everyone else had problems with it? And even the ones that we've had, they've been suppressed. We had 2 ads taken down by Facebook in the 5 days before election because we dared criticize vaccine mandates.
Yeah, Facebook permanently banned my page from doing ads because I shared false information about COVID that I'm sure is now very factual.
Right.
But at the time I shared it, they considered it false. And so I actually had to spring up a different Facebook page just to do ads on.
Wow.
Yeah, well, they literally eliminated our Facebook page. So the current Facebook page we have, our newer one, has not even close to the same traction it used to have. And then, of course, when we run an ad that says we don't want kids having mandates on COVID vaccines, a very, very mainstream viewpoint. Most parents agree with us, actually, on this issue. That's why the vaccination of youth is so small, and then they say this goes against our community standards. And it's really interesting. I should have had you prepped on this, Dawson. If you look at the, they'll say your ad's taken down, it's discontinued, and you see the appeal process, and it says something like, what would you like to do? And it only gives you one option, and the one option you can select basically says you can never appeal this decision in the future. I'm like, where's the other option? And they didn't give me another option. It's so spooky when you see this. I'll do an article on it, and we'll reference it on a future show. Here's what I want to go back to. I think in many ways the Republican establishment has got to take a lot of blame. And, of course, they won't take it, okay? We're not like these big Republican cheerleaders, but a lot of candidates like you run in the Republican Party. I certainly become a delegate. When we tell people to become delegates, they can choose which party they want to go to. The overwhelming amount of them go Republican because the Democrats have completely lost their way, even though they seem to have figured out how to be successful electorally still, which is crazy. But the Republican brand is awful because you have to look at this election, and Joe Biden is hated. There's chants at stadiums. I remember you were one of the first people to tell me about these chants that were F Joe Biden. And I was like, Mort, are you sure you're hearing this right? Like, are we just
right. You didn't believe me.
I didn't believe him. Like, I think it was.
You thought they were saying "Let's go, Brandon."
Yeah.
No, this is before Let's Go, Brandon.
I know. I'm sure.
Yeah, I know, right? And I remember you were like, they're saying F Joe Biden. I'm like, it seems too good to be true because chants. Sometimes people can't tell what they are, especially reporters interviewing a guy named Brandon. You just see this hatred for Joe Biden and disdain for Kamala Harris. And Democrats, when polled, people are like, Democrats are terrible on crime. Democrats are terrible on inflation. They literally say those are their top two issues. Every poll basically saying that.
Yep.
Abortion would be number 3. So just by that logic alone, how on earth could Democrats win unless you just repudiate Republicans and think they offer you no solution?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not true that Democrats are terrible on those issues. People have voiced that opinion, but they apparently just don't think Republicans are any good. And certainly the good conservatives have great, honest solutions to it, but when do those get heard? They get suppressed. They want to throw more out of the Capitol. They don't want this guy talking, and you're a very common sense guy.
Not when you say they, you're talking Democrats and establishment Republicans.
Well, they're the same thing. It's a uniparty,
yes,
right?
They are.
Yeah, the uniparty won last night. They always win, right? Unless you have some kind of resurgence of large amount of conservative victors, they're always going to win. So I look at the establishment, and then it's like, certainly to you conservatives, and a lot of you guys were in these swing districts, I don't think people always want to, people don't really. Mort ran against in a district in 2018 that was a hard swing blue, just like my district. It went from far red to blue. And then you were like the only Republican to win in the suburbs that wasn't an incumbent or had never run for office or had never been in office before. You were the only guy to pull this off. All the other races won were basically Greater Minnesota or Keith Franke, who had already served at one point.
Yeah, and honestly, if there's anything that pisses me off, okay, it's running in this swing district and going, to abolish income tax, running on constitutional carry, on protecting babies, running on these things that conservatives across the country believe in a swing district, when I can tell you from firsthand experience, the only thing the people at the Capitol care about is getting reelected. But then you see these guys like a Kurt Doubt or these folks in these super strong 80-20 districts, when they tuck their tail and they refuse to actually act on the things that they claim they care about. That infuriates me, and it should infuriate like any liberty-loving person across the state when they see these people who are almost guaranteed to get reelected, but they refuse to act in the same fashion that they campaign.
And they're all trying to play this calculus, like, but then the guys in the swing districts are going to lose because we went too far
and
right.
Ultimately, what happens in the Capitol, and I was talking to several new legislators last week, and that, of course, these guys got elected yesterday. And I was telling them, look, what happens is, what happens in Minnesota politics in the Republican Party is the most moderate, squishiest, weakest Republicans end up steering the entire ship. And that's why we sit here and people like me and probably you guys get frustrated with Republicans that promise to shrink the size and scope of state government, but then they never do it because what their fear is, well, we might lose our majority. And especially if we actually had the majority right now, they'd say, oh, we can't do that because little Jimmy over there, Representative Jimmy John, he won't get reelected if we actually do constitutional carry. And you don't want to be responsible for Jimmy being gone, do you? Jimmy's your pal. And that's the crux of this whole relationship, got to be friends with politicians bullshit that gets pushed in the Capitol.
And then you do absolutely nothing. You still lose, right?
Yeah,
So it's like, what do we have to show? You get nothing to show for this.
Yeah,
stuff.
you motivate nobody. Nobody cares about you. You don't energize anybody. And I think when Republicans learn that lesson, maybe we'll see some inroads. And I think, to me, that's what watching last night and seeing Florida, like watching Ron DeSantis go from like a 1% victory 4 years ago to a 20% win. And you see these changes in like Dade County. I think largely when Republicans stand up and actually fight for a lot of these things that are just common sense, but they're actually willing to be bold and lead, the electorate will reward them. But we don't, frankly, have that in Minnesota.
Right, and I think that's one of the big issues. Another big issue I see is the abortion thing that played out. I mean, the Democrats are certainly going to read it this way, that they want an abortion, right? And God forbid what's going to happen from that, because let's be honest what they want to do. They want to kill human lives. They want to kill babies. In fact, I saw a comment, what if I got it pulled up? It was about, maybe it was Hortman talking about it, how they're finally going to now be able to protect the human rights and the freedoms of Minnesotans. Where did I see this? Because it's almost laughable. They're using this stupid talking point that they're actually there for private individual health choices by these people. Let me just do a Google search of freedom, because they say this and they don't even understand what they're saying in the end, or they do, and they're just so dishonest. That's not pulling up in that one. Let me just check see if it's on this, because I would love to get yeah, here it is. DFL Speaker Melissa Hortman said from the stage at the DFL election night party in St. Paul. Oh, and by the way, they want a government that respects, so she's referring to the voters here and why they were given this majority. They want a government that respects their personal freedom and bodily autonomy.
So no vaccine mandates.
No vaccine mandate, right?
Talking about, right?
Yeah, right?
It must be. It's the only thing that comes to mind.
They're such hypocrites. But no, it's all they care about is killing humans. That's bodily autonomy, apparently, even though it's a different body, right? And so what I think happened here is a major screw up by Republicans. We've been saying this for about a month now. The talking point by Republicans, it was so terrible. And this is David Hand's literal own words. If we had the article, we could read it verbatim. But it was basically the abortion is a constitutionally protected right in Minnesota, which is not true, but that's what they said. And it's not on the ballot, okay? So you're like basically telling someone, no, screw you. I don't care what you want to vote on. It's not on the ballot. Like, I know better than you. It's the worst talking point ever. Meanwhile, the talking point that I believe should have happened, because of abortion, in hindsight, abortion probably made a big difference. Certainly polls put it at number 3. Is that the Democrats are the extreme on abortion. They want to kill a baby up to the moment of birth. You could have a 7-pound baby, 8.5 months old, and they think that life should be ended. You tell me what's extreme. That's extreme. If you're going to lead an abortion, stop playing the stupid defense. We ended up with Scott Jensen, who honestly, I don't know, is he even pro-life anymore? What did we get out of this election?
I think that last debate he came out being pro-choice, from what I heard.
Basically?
Yeah. I mean, when I got that email from David Hahn, or Han, or whatever the hell you say this guy's name, I read this.
David, not going to work here anymore.
Yeah, hopefully. I heard he's not even running to be reelected, which is wise. But, of course, some other swamp creature will replace him. Mm-hmm. I get that email from David Hahn, whatever, a month ago, and I'm reading this thing. And to me, you know, the interpretation was tuck tail and run from this issue. Mm-hmm. Like he was pretty much saying, you don't want anything to do with this thing. Just turn around and run away from it. And that's what most Republicans did, is they took his talking points point by point and just regurgitated it. Like my state senator, Eric Pratt, I watched his debate, and David Hanna would have been so proud of Eric Pratt that day, because he just said, it's not on the ballot, it's constitutional right. When I opened my state constitution, which I saw about 3 of them in my office today when I went to go clean it out, I thumbed through it, and the word abortion just is not mentioned in the state
shocking,
constitution.
Yeah.
It's weird.
I've done the Control F and tried to find that. It's not on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but obviously that's their next move. They do want to put it in the Constitution, and that's probably what Hortman means, that she wants to install it into the state constitution, and we're seeing it happen in other states too. So that's the next move they're planning.
Yeah, what just happened is you got radicals running the state. They want to call Action for Labor radicals, far right wing, and I was explaining this to someone the other day. Here's what we believe. We believe that the government should follow the Constitution. And we believe that the government should be limited and that taxes should not be taken from our people and it should stay in their hands. Those are not radical positions. Those are very mainstream. In fact, I would argue those are the founding principles of our country. The Democrats are so far opposed to that.
Yeah. And I just, before we went live here, I had a comment on my Facebook page. Somebody was saying, well, not all hope is lost. We still have a constitution. And I'm not here saying all hope is lost, but I replied to him and said, look, if you think anybody in that Capitol building gives a rat's ass about the Constitution, you are sorely mistaken. I see it every single day in there. They don't care. And I can tell you why they don't care is because nobody, or rarely, does it happen where there's actually consequences for violating that constitutional oath that we all take.
Right.
And case in point, last night, Democrats win big. They violate the state constitution and the U.S. Constitution all the time,
right.
But until the people across the state rise up and demand and wield those consequences, they will not give a shit.
Yeah, and
Is
that's
that blunt enough?
Yeah, I know. And you see these results, and you're like, God, I don't even want to be in politics anymore. And it's like, oh my God. I mean, now you have to fight even harder, because if you don't stand and resist this stuff. I mean, listen, I won't fault anyone for going, all right, I'm done with Minnesota, I'm moving. But if you're like me and you can't just go do that, right? Just don't think I don't have those same urges. I love Alaska, especially if they get rid of Murkowski.
Oh, yeah.
So I like out west, man. Texas is too hot. Florida is not terrible. But I love Minnesota. It's a great state. And family and house and community, that stuff's important. So it's not just like it's easy to pick up and leave. You better fight for this thing. These guys are coming after our guns. Like I said, Nathan Wiesberg, they want to turn you into a felon. They want to take your guns away. They want to kill babies. They want to take your guns away. They want to silence your speech. They want to take the money you were overtaxed by in an inflationary environment. There's estimates that right now, because of inflation, the average family is paying $5,000 more in expenses, and they roughly are holding on to that much of our money, and they won't even give it all back. So that's the radicals you get. And climate change, by the way. I don't know how anyone stands on these radical climate policies when you're looking at Europe going into this winter going, oh, crap, what are we going to do to heat people's homes?
Mm-hmm.
And now we possibly have a diesel shortage, and interest rates are climbing because the Fed, which is out of its mind, and it's always been out of its mind in its charter, but they're raising interest rates because of the massive inflation, because they print money out of thin air just to bail us all out during COVID. And so they have to raise interest rates so that inflation's not out of control. And then meanwhile, what the heck's going to happen to all this publicly financed debt, right? What's going to happen to all of our investments in bonds or our mortgages, our homes, when interest rates go up, the prices go down? We have a catastrophe at hand, an economic catastrophe at hand, and crime goes up when there's economic catastrophes. And this is the future we have because the damn Democrats and this leftist mentality is in charge. And I don't think that just because you had a red wave last night, it was all going to get solved. But certainly there was hope, and now there's not much hope in that. And so you can't just sit at home and not participate. At this point, you have got to. Anyone that sat on the sidelines now, you're going to have a big awakening.
Oh, yeah. The Democrats want us to just roll over and die now with these results. They want us to just accept it, and there's nothing we can do. But I'm not done fighting.
I mean, Jesse, I literally I don't want to do this, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't care to do it anymore,
yeah.
Right? It's not fun. There's so many other things I'd rather do. It's deer hunting season. You think I want to be back here in civilization?
Right.
There's not an option here. Unless you're willing to move and leave the state, you better fight tooth and nail against this because they literally are going to impact your life big time. It's that old saying that you might not have an interest in politics, but politics has an interest in you, right? Right, Dawson? You had never heard that one, did you? See, Dawson was like not even that active in politics, but politics has always been active in your life. It really messed you up. And COVID was a big awakening to a large amount of the population. And that's what it kills me that these COVID tyrants like Whitmer and Evers and Walz and, of course, Gavin Newsom, they get reelected for all the sins that they committed against our freedoms.
Yeah, it is shocking that after all of that, and politicians prey on your short memory. I mean, that's just a reality. And that's what, frankly, scares me about Tony Jurgens. If I don't want to backtrack an hour ago, but he's going to try to prey on people's short memory out there in the eastern suburbs. But they prey on your short memory, and it concerns me that if after COVID and lockdowns and vaccine mandates, after Wall said, vaccine mandates, that's crazy, they don't exist. Oh, they exist. And he mandated state workers get the vaccine. The fact that we still need people to take more medicine and take more of this abuse and this tyranny before they're willing to realize that this is the wrong direction. 3/4 of Americans are saying we're on the wrong path.
Yeah.
Like, it's amazing we didn't see this red wave last night, but apparently people haven't had their fill, and hopefully, and I trust they will get their fill, and then they'll wake up.
Well, and because Democrats are in charge, then what you pretty much have two options. And please pipe in if you're watching live and you have a different view or there's some other option here. But I see two options. Either there's cheating, right? I'm pointing to you, Jesse. You kind of go down that route. Or the Republican brand, despite them not being in charge and despite the Democrats being terrible when polled on these issues, they just didn't trust the Republicans.
And the Democrats turned out. I mean, that's the big thing, too. It's these Democrats showed up to vote. You know, it didn't matter that Trump wasn't on the ballot. They treated it like Trump was on the ballot, and they showed up to try to prevent the red wave.
Yeah, and then you also have to look on why didn't Republicans turn out more people. Now go to the article I've got. If you're a Republican candidate, pull up the one, Action for Liberty, corrupt GOP chair David Hand's radical move to harm conservative endorsed candidates. So there you go. This was a move by the chair of the Republican Party cutting off data access for, I don't even know what the final count was. It was initially 5, but I think it might have been 6 or 7 GOP endorsed candidates. They cut their data off before the primary. This was an attempt for them to sink them so that the establishment candidates could win the primary. It worked in a couple races. Brett Bussman, Natalie Barnes ended up going down, but guys like Bishofsky and DePel and Bill Liskey ended up still winning, luckily, and prevailing. Bill Liskey, by the way, did win, so he is a Minnesota senator. But once again, Bill's going to be in the minority with Nathan Wiesenberg. So they, this is the path to even get to that point. There you have the Republican Party working against them. This is how stupid they are. Like, if you want to talk about losses, the Republican Party just screw themselves. They created this own mess in the most important district, Senate District 41. I'd argue that's the most important one. Chamberlain's, I think, was what ended up getting the most money spent. But DePel should have been a pickup, right? And DePel's a great candidate. Like, I saw like someone writing like, "Oh, it's an extreme Action for Liberty candidate." Tom DePel's not extreme. He fits the district very well, and did a hell of a job campaigning. Door knocked very well, lots of energy in that campaign. But he's working against this kind of monstrosity. And then if you pull up the other article. And there wasn't as much money spent in the primary against DePel, at least not that the records show. Kurt Dow, who you gave the Rhino of the Year award to, Mort. There you go. There it is right there. And there's a rhino on the hat, too. It's a nice hat. It's actually
It is a very nice hat.
It's too cool of a hat to
It is. I've got a better one, actually. I'll be improving the hat.
So Dowd and a bunch of other Republican establishment groups spent $359,000. In the case of Dowd, scroll down. I think it was like $170,000. They spent like $60 against Mort. $65,000 attempt to beat A-rated Eric Mortensen, $64,900 to try to beat Bashowski. They put up a big goose egg. We cover this in another thing. And then if you go down, anyhow, they used the Minnesota Jobs Coalition to spend this money, and they got money from Washington, D.C. What is that called? The Republican State Leadership Committee or something like that. So they took this money from D.C. and then spent it to try to beat conservatives, and then they put up a goose egg. The conservatives still win. And then in the case of certainly the first two races, because Wiener was going to get in and Altendorf won, they didn't spend any money to try to help Mort or Mark Bashowski. So you basically spent money, worked against these candidates, Mark an endorsed candidate, Mort being the incumbent, in very important swing districts, and now you're in the minority. So there you go. I mean, you just alluded to it before. The point of the minority leader is to become the majority leader, and they failed at that tremendously.
Yeah, but look, Kurt Dowd, if he was living 20 miles further south than Crown or wherever the hell he claims to live or where his district is, he would be a Democrat. I mean, this guy, this is his industry. He has no principles. The government and being a politician is just, that's his career. So he doesn't care about delivering conservative, solutions, results. It's just to him and a lot of people in the Capitol. And this is like one of the things I hope people wake up to is you're getting lied to all the time by these guys. They don't care about what they tell you to your face. They care about staying in power and feeling important and self-righteous.
Yeah, I remember I came out of 2018, and I think I wrote about this, and that we need to have a real honest conversation internally as conservatives or Republicans. In this case, it's even more important because in 2018, you at least had the presidency. Now it's like the whole government is Democrat. Even if the Republicans take the U.S. House, it's really not gonna make any difference in the end. They'll be too chicken shit to even impeach Biden, and it'll go nowhere in the Senate, and they're going to play all the shenanigans in the Senate. So at this point, the Republican Party's got to completely change. Like, I don't see any other way about it. They have to, David Hand should resign, right? You put up a goose egg again in the statewide race. I don't know what other metric you got way outspent. What other metric do you need to show that you were a massive failure? And then, Doubt hasn't won a majority since 2016, right? Is that, 2016. Yep. So how many more times are you going to follow his failed leadership? And when he's in the majority, he basically makes you guys a Democrat light. So what's the point in that guy? Jeremy Miller lost the Senate. And they played these games with the DePel race. They played him with Wiesenberg, too, and luckily they overcame it, Wiesenberg. The thing about playing the game with Wiesenberg is you could go against a guy like Wiesenberg, and then in the very end, it's not going to hurt him in the general election. He's got a 50-point margin. Maybe it hurt him because Wiesenberg didn't quite hit 75, right? So there you go. The 3-point that he lost from those shenanigans. Doesn't matter. He's still a senator. They make a big difference in Tom DePel's race. And I'm trying to think if there's any other races that were – I mean, I guess Natalie Barnes versus Eric Pratt could have come into play in the end, right?
Oh yeah,
but they were lucky. Won. They were lucky enough to win that one for their.
I voted for Natalie Barnes.
Yeah,
I did yesterday.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I wouldn't vote for Eric Pratt. I voted for Natalie. Right in.
Oh, that's funny. I should have wrote her in for judge or something. I like her. Oh man, so yeah, they've got a clean house at this point, and what's the over under on that happening, Mort?
On the Republican State Party cleaning house, the over-under? I mean, it's a 0% chance of that happening. I mean, I think there is. Isn't there a leadership election coming up
in December, but
I don't know if anybody – at this point, we need candidates. I don't even know if there's anybody even, running for chair, but boy, it would be nice. The unfortunate part is even if you get good people in these offices – the lust for power kicks in and they become corrupt. I mean, it's almost inevitable. It's why you see it happen in politics all the time, whether it's mayor, dog catcher, president. 99% of these people just become corrupted.
Yeah, and some of these guys have good principles and are good people when they go in.
Yeah,
and they got to keep that. So Gun to your head, who becomes the minority leader in the Minnesota House?
Who's the minority leader with a gun to my head? I mean, it's going to be Doubt. That
You
guy.
think so?
Oh, he instills so much fear. So many of the people in the caucus can't stand the guy, but they are scared to death of him. So yeah, I mean, being in the room 2 years ago when they elected minority leader, like Jim Nash ran he was so sheepish. And then Jeff Backer ran 2 years ago, this is all news to people because this is secret information. That
And
no
they're
going to
do it again too on Friday, right? They'll have a secret.
Oh yeah,
caucus
this
meeting.
Friday morning, I guarantee they'll have this election. And of course, they'll come out of it just like they did 2 years ago and 4 years ago. Dowd will walk out, and the media will be there, and he'll say, "I was elected unanimously as minority leader."
Yeah.
No, he wasn't. He had 2 other challengers 2 years ago. But that's what I think will happen: is Dowd will get elected, and it'll just be rinse and repeat down there.
Yeah, well, and this is just why we're not going anywhere, because this is the crap. These guys do the same thing over and over again. It's unbelievable. And, these elections eventually come down to there's got to be some kind of momentum, and the momentum wasn't on our side. And there's a lot. Listen, it's not that we don't share any blame. I always go back and I go, could we have done this or that? Certainly we did a lot against Julie Sandstead up in used to be Senate District 7.
Now she's in 7A.
Oh, it is still 7A. I always forget because most of these districts change numbers, but that one is still 7. So, it 6 before?
She was in 5, right?
No, she was 6
6,
before.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, you're right.
So it is 7. I can't even remember which district is which.
Yep.
7 used to be Duluth. So anyhow, door knocked every house in that district, and so she did get taken out. But same thing with David Lizagard, and he survived. Eklund didn't, so Eklund did go down, which is in 3A, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then there's 3B with Mary Murphy.
Yeah, we didn't.
What
play in
happened
that
with the
district.
Hurt race? Did Murphy get
Yeah. So
reelected?
as it stands right now, I think it's like 35 votes with Murphy down. So
She's down 35 votes.
something like that. Yeah. So we might see the retirement of Mary Murphy.
That'd be awesome. Her office is right by mine, and she is a sweet lady, but it's time for her to be done.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Any comments there, Bridget? We want to read before we sign off today. All right, great question. So let me go back to 2012's election. So there's a massive red wave in 2010. All of us thought that was going to happen again last night. Mm-hmm. We were reading it the same way as the Tea Party surge in 2010. It didn't happen. In fact, I still don't know what this movement's called. There's some movement that we're a part of. It's like the New Conservative Movement. Mm-hmm. They called it the Tea Party in 2010. We're not the Tea Party, but it's like that. And there's a lot of new people that came into it, mostly on medical freedom and COVID tyranny. So we thought this was going to be a 2010 year. It didn't turn out to be that way. So in refutation of whatever little things Republicans did, basically what they didn't do, the electorate swung hard left. Well, I'll tell you what also caused it. It was Romney versus Obama in 2012. Mm-hmm. There's no energy behind Romney. So the top of the ticket, the energy was behind Obama, even though the guy was disliked to some degree. They really didn't care for Mitt Romney. I don't blame him on that one, right? So 2012, the Democrats take back the Minnesota legislature. It goes from Republican control, House and Senate, to Democrat control in 2012. Oh, another little thing, that Michael Broadcorp twerp, that guy that lives on Twitter all day long, he had that affair with Amy Koch, the Senate Majority Leader. So they had that little internal blow up too with staff. And now that I think about it, there was ballot issues in 2012. They put on a marriage amendment on the ballot too. So there's a lot of factors. Anyhow, Democrats take back control. And in 2013, the House and Senate, Democrat controlled, go after your guns. And I'm talking about if you had a firearm with a magazine of 7 rounds, they wanted to ban that. I remember there's 2 competing bills at the time, one that had 10 rounds and one that had 7. They couldn't even agree on what amount of capacity a magazine was. Very dangerous. Now, if you're a gun person like myself, a 7-round magazine.
Yeah, I don't have anything less than 10, I don't think.
I mean, I do. I
maybe
can think
have
of
a
my
5.
Conceal Sig Sauer P238 six round mag with one in the whole, but
Oh yeah, I've got one.
so
of
that
those.
one would count, I guess.
Yeah.
But I mean, geez, my 22 I was shooting grouse with, it's got 10? It's just 10-round mag.
Yeah.
So they wanted to ban those firearms. Of course, they wanted to ban the AR-15, turn guys like me into instant felons because I am not giving up my gun. They wanted to make it illegal to have body armor. Someone was in committee going, what about the visiting football teams playing the Vikings? Because the way that the law read, the body armor of a quarterback, quarterbacks take these shots to the ribs and midsection, so they wear these protective plates on them. Technically would have been under the law, it would have been illegal. But anyhow, they were trying to stop people from having body armor. I don't know the logic.
Wow.
If the logic was, oh, now they're going to shoot everyone up because then they can't get hit. It's like, how about someone just doesn't want to get hit? They want to ban body armor. Democrats went after everything. And I remember this. We had people show up to the Capitol. It was like 20-1 pro Second Amendment versus Democrats, and we might be in that boat again. And Action for Liberty has got to fight the gun issue, and luckily we have some allied groups on that issue. But that could be exactly what happens. So what do you do? Who's the guy that asked the question? I forgot his name.
Curtis, I think Curtis.
Curtis.
Yeah.
That's what you do, Curtis. So Action for Liberty is a policy group, right? We go after issues. I love to see these guys get elected, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who's elected. We're going to fight for your liberty. And you're going to have a bigger fight for your liberty now. See, I was thinking, Jesse, that we were going to go busy at work and go, hey, Republicans, you said you were going to do this thing. We're going to hold you accountable on it. That's what I thought our next 2 years were going to be like.
Yeah, this went from a huge offensive battle to a even bigger defensive battle.
Correct.
Like that.
But it's not like you give up.
Yep.
Like, technically, a lot of wars that we fight in America these days, we could give up. We could leave, right? Like Afghanistan, although left in disgrace under Biden. But you don't need to be in Afghanistan, right? But if you're invading our homeland, you can't leave, and that's what just happened. Like, the biggest enemy to us is not Al-Qaeda. It's not ISIS. It's not the Taliban. It's not even Russia. The biggest threat to America is self-serving politicians coming after your liberty. 100%, that's the biggest threat. When I left the military after 12 years, I went into politics because I thought that was a better thing for the future of our country. Not fighting in Iraq, right? It was to fight here against these domestic enemies, which is really the self-serving politicians, the uniparty. So, Curtis, you got to stay engaged because now the fight's even bigger. They are going to come after your guns and your God-given liberties. And that's what I believe is I believe your liberty was given to you by your Creator, by God, and no one can take that away from you. Anyone that tries taking that away from you, you have to fight back. And we organize to fight back. So, yes, even with Democrats in control of the Minnesota House and Governor Walz in office, we were able to end Governor Walz's emergency powers. We forced these guys to do it because they were too fearful of losing the Dave Lizigards and the Julie Sandsteds of the world and all these other cronies. So they had to cough up those powers. And Julie Sandstead ended up losing in the end. But Lizagard, if he never gave that up, probably different story. So this is how you cannot hide. I don't fault you if you want to move to Florida. Trust me. It's warmer down there. Winters are nicer. More and I disagree with it. We like the winters up here. But it's nicer, right? If you don't like cold weather. And you got a damn good governor. But unless you're going to move, you got to fight. So that's what you do, Curtis. You fight. All right, what else, Bridget?
Well, Shelley Tripp just adds to your comment there. She said, I'm not going to quit fighting. This is just a down day, but we can still keep fighting and using our voices.
100%, Shelley. Right on. And none of us like this. It's not like this is definitely not what we want to see. I'd rather been on the offense. I remember you wrote a post something like, I just got a call from Scott Jensen. I can't wait to work with him because he was talking big on it. Income tax elimination.
He was talking big on that, constitutional carry, revising emergency powers, the Never Again bill. Like, I was super excited. I mean, that's where my head was at until about 11 o'clock last night is we're going to be finally on offense. We're going to finally deliver for these guys. I'm willing to drag these Republicans down the path that they all campaign on and then they never act on when they're in office.
And if they do, good, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely.
We'll praise them for it.
Great.
If they do what they said they're going to do.
Absolutely. Come along. So, man, huge change when you see these results. And I didn't even know this morning that Republicans didn't even get the House, the state House back. And I didn't know that they failed to keep the state Senate until this morning when I looked. And it's like, you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah,
It's-
when we first chatted, you were kind of like, "Oh man, I screwed up" or something like that. And I was like, "Mort, pretty much, it was 2018 again.
Yeah, that's
Like
exactly how
not
it
as
feels.
not as much of a blue wave as 2018, but it was like it was 2018. Or something.
Yep.
You lost in 2018.
Yep.
It's like it doesn't matter what you do. Like the amount of effort you put in 2018, and your opponent doubled his vote from 2014. Like well, you can't. What are you gonna do?
Yep.
So all right, what other comments there, Bridget?
Here's another question from Mandy Reed. How much do you think the Florida elections reflect the mass exodus of Republicans and conservatives from strong blue states like California and New York?
Say that question again? How does it what?
How
The
much
mass
does-
exodus saying that all these people
Yeah.
left
Oh.
to left these blue states to go to Florida. There's definitely some reason to think that because I mean DeSantis won after Mordred pointed out earlier that it was a 1-point race last time to a 20-point race. Part of that's because Charlie Crist is Joe Biden 2.0 and ran a terrible campaign, and he's the previous governor of Florida too. So nobody wanted to see Charlie Crist back in there. Everybody knows that he's a slime ball. So DeSantis knew how to tap into the energy and 100%, and so he was able to do it. And so part of the reason is because of all these people moving there, but also part of it is the leadership that he brought.
Yeah, I'm certainly interested to seeing somebody's going to do a study on this. Right, they're going to track where people are moving to and from, and they're going to do some sort of a study to see how this affected this election. Like they were quick to call Michigan, but for weeks they've been saying this Tudor Dixon was going to be running it tight. They were quick to call New York governor race when they've been telling us for weeks it's going to be a toss-up, and maybe that Zeldin guy would have won. So I think the studies will come out, and maybe this gets ahead of the studies. I do think the lesson learned, one of the big lessons was kind of the power of federalism or voting with your feet. And I think the bluer states got bluer. I think the redder states got redder. And I think that's why I don't blame anybody who is sitting here going, well, is Minnesota lost territory? And should they just go to a place with people who share their values? So I think that was one of the big takeaways. Red states got redder, blue got bluer. And I think a lot of that is because of the overreaction to COVID. I think people who want their own liberties, they said, I'm going to go to the freer states. And the people who said, tell me what to do, Mr. Governor and government, they were perfectly fine staying where they're at.
Here's my problem, and I agree with your guys' assessment 100%. I have a unique job. My job is to try to lead this conservative movement. Action for Liberty has 100,000 some people that follow what we do to some degree, and these are real good people. I love the Patriots. We have the best supporters on the planet, the best. You just hear these comments. I love the comments of people that are watching the show right now. What do you do with that? I want you guys to be in the state with me. We just happen to be in a state with Minneapolis, St. Paul, and a bunch of numbnuts that think Tim Walz did a good job. A lot of us can't move. I mean, there's the old, what's that movement? Munson did this back in the day, that where you break off from the state.
Oh,
What was
seceding,
it?
go to South
Seceding,
Dakota?
yeah. It's like almost kind of like just put Minneapolis, St. Paul, and make that the state, and then everything else is different because it literally changes the dynamic. But I mean, there's just too many of us, and more. You got a daughter in high school and another kid in middle school. It's not easy for you to pick up and move.
Yep.
I know you probably have the flexibility job-wise, but certainly you just can't pick up and move your family, and I'm certainly not going to move, right? Jesse, you could move in tomorrow, right? Damn. Same thing with you, Bridget.
I know.
Jeez.
Florida
Yeah.
has always been calling my name.
Yeah, well, we still want you to, by the way. Let me put that on the record. So too many people just can't do it feasibly, and so I feel like there's something that I feel a strong desire to still lead this resistance to the political class. I also want to say this, and I forgot to posit this theory, or at least unwrap it more. You have to look at the voters got duped to a degree by the media. They're listening to traditional media. They're listening to social media, which is silencing views like ours, right? And they're getting duped. And I have to look at the way to solve this problem as continuing to build alternative media, like what we're doing right here, the shows. Like, actually, we built this big studio. We want to more. Aren't you going to do a show now?
Sorry, you caught me looking at comments on this show, though. I was just seeing what people are saying. Yeah, I'm going to do something. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to cast a super wide net over these next couple weeks. And, I'm not going anywhere, which is this is funny when I see like the trolls on my Facebook page saying, yeah, you're gone. It's like, the hell I am. I'm still right here. And what are you going to do about it? Because I don't plan on going anywhere. The fight remains. It's not over. I just won't be in the state capitol doing the fight, which is fine. There's plenty of things that can be done outside the capitol. I think that's a huge lesson that people need to learn, because they tend to look at politicians in capitol buildings and think, well, they just need to, do better, vote better. It's like, no, man, you've got so much political power like in your back pocket. Every person across the state, across the country, it's just a matter of you willing to dig into it and start to wield that political power. And if you don't know how to wield it, feel free to give me a call, because it's some of the funnest stuff you can do.
That's your legacy. I don't think you're ever running again, right? I mean,
I
guess
don't
you
have
wanna
any
close the door.
plans to.
You hated the job. People don't have any idea how much you hated it.
Oh, the people are like, oh, you're in it for yourself. You're doing this. Like,
Oh,
you
God.
idiots know nothing about me.
God.
Like, if I was behaving selfishly, I'd be on a homestead in Alaska,
Yeah.
like living off the land. You'd never hear from me again. Like, this is not about me. Everything I was doing was for fighting for the people and empowering them to take back their state government.
And that's your legacy, in my opinion, is you literally did this. You called these guys out. You told them how to get active. There are candidates running this cycle, and I wish that, like, the Wendy's of the world actually got in, because Wendy Phillips is a wonderful person. She ran in a really tough district, but they credit you being the one recruiting them. So you did this thing, and you taught people how to stand up. You were a big reason why Governor Walz had to end his emergency. You're a big reason why there was a resistance here in the state against vaccine mandates. That's your legacy. You're more powerful than most legislators up there, because they take this direct path. I got to get a bill, and I got to get this, and then it ends up being a shitty bill that is wrapped up in an omnibus bill. And then they want to use that against you, like, oh, he doesn't pass legislation, which wasn't even true. But it's like, yeah, Mort's actually inspired a lot of people. That's more
well,
important.
that's been my mission the whole time. Is it's tough to get wrapped up in people. Seem to think defining an effective legislator means passing bills. And I guess that's one way. But when you're in the minority in the House, like the first day down there, Pat Garofalo, state representative, came up to me in this caucus meeting and said, hey, you know what the reality is? You're in the minority. We're all in the minority. And I literally, this is a very true story. I'd challenge anybody to tell me it's not, because I'll prove otherwise. He came up to me and said, hey, you're in the minority here. The reality is you'll get nothing done. And he said, none of us are going to get anything done because we're in the minority. So if you can take that focus and look outside the Capitol and try to build a movement of people who are empowered and informed and willing to take action, I think that's where we can make a tremendous impact. And so that's certainly where I spent the last couple of years focusing.
All right. Other comments there, Bridget?
We don't have a whole lot of other questions. A lot of people just...
Well, read them. I don't care if they're questions or
want me
not.
to keep going? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll throw out that Donald Colshaw, Mort's friend, has been commenting. He says he's moving. But
Yeah, I feel bad. Donald's one of those guys that would live in that homestead with you, Mort.
Yeah,
So-
Don, you're not going anywhere. Shut your mouth.
Kathy Odenthal, this is the last comment, so it's just right here. She says, yay, Mort, keep raising your voice. We need you.
Exactly. Agree with Kathy on that.
Oh, Drew Roach did have a comment that I wanted to read, because I remember him at the convention.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Drew's a good guy.
Yeah, so he says the Minnesota GOP leadership can blame themselves for this loss. They set the tone for lack of trust in Minnesota elections. Republican leadership lacks transparency. They could have had audits in place at the convention to give voters trust in the process. We, the people, want to trust the process, and it's hard to when your own GOP leadership isn't transparent.
Yep.
Yeah, great point, right? And we were calling for this. Like, the base of conservative voters don't like machines, right, counting votes. And then you get to the state convention, the GOP state convention, and I'm sure there's some clever lefties that tweeted about this, that they were using electronic voting tabulation. And I know that Neil Shaw actually asked for the results or wanted the audit, and they didn't give it to him.
Mm-hmm.
So you would think Wardlow would really be interested in that as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, the big hit job in Wardlow, and Jim Schultz didn't end up winning. Not that I want to fault Jim Schultz. I thought he ran a decent campaign. It's unbelievable he can't beat Keith Ellison. Like, that's really what it's like. we can't beat Keith Ellison. Like, that's a joke. This guy's
Yeah.
a piece of garbage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the polls were showing, I think, that Schultz had like a 5 to 8 point lead or something like that.
Mhm.
Like, if anybody was going to win statewide, it looked like it was going to be Jim Schultz. Like, I
Yeah.
thought that was just a gimme.
Mm-hmm.
So to wake up today and see that didn't even happen, it was just like, holy cow, what a night.
Yeah, what a night. And next 4 years. All right. Well, Mort, thanks very much for joining us. We appreciate everything you've done, and no regrets, right?
I literally have no regrets. I
Yeah.
ran on what I said I would do. I did what I said I would do. So I have absolutely zero regrets, and I'm thankful that I took that path. Like, if I had campaigned on one thing and done the opposite and then lose the next election, holy cow, I would be sitting here going, what if I had just done what I said I would? So
Yeah.
no regrets for me.
Yeah. Well, now I guess the path is clear for Bob Lunan to run a fourth time.
Go get him, Bob.
Yeah.
We'll never see the Lunan versus Mort fiasco ever again. He so much wants it. Now you can have fun in that blue district, because that Shakopee used to be red. But this is all over. You see this happening. The shifts in politics. You don't have to look Florida and Texas. The shifts are happening right here.
Yeah.
Like, the Iron Range just went red, right? A lot of us knew this. We door knocked tremendously up there. Mary Murphy loses, Sandstead lost, although that seat's a little different. But, like, truly up there in the Boundary Waters, 3A, which is the largest district, that just went for, how do you say his name? Scraba?
Scrabba. Something like that, yeah.
So
Scraba, yeah.
Yeah, Eklund got taken out, so that's good.
Mm-hmm.
Senate seat didn't go red, though, at least from what we understand right now.
Right, yeah, it's still close, but it looks like it went to the Democrats.
Right.
And that was despite Tom Bach endorsing the Republican.
Yeah. Yeah, crazy.
Yep.
All right. Thank you guys for tuning in. And, we are going to be breaking all the news. This is not done. I think there'll probably be more dynamics that happen this week. I mean, there might be recounts. There might be other things. So we'll bring you the most important news in Minnesota when it comes to your future and your liberties. Tune in next time.